Sony now owns 19 studios, or 20 if you count Bungie, but they're still in the process of acquiring that. And all these companies are working on PlayStation 5 exclusives, PSVR 2 titles, and slowly but surely more PC games. We totally know about some of these titles, like God of War Ragnarok, Spider-Man 2, Wolverine, but a year ago we learned that PlayStation Studios has over 25 games in development, with almost half of them being new IP. And this was in June 2021, before they acquired Housemarque, Firesprite, Bluepoint Games, and Haven Studios. So in this video I want to go over all the big PlayStation exclusives that these first-party studios are working on, especially focused on the titles we don't know a lot about yet. Insomniac is, for example, working on 1 or 2 secret games, just like Santa Monica, and what are the Days Gone developers up to? It seems that some big Sony franchises are coming back, just a ton to go over. Of course, if you are hyped for the future of PlayStation, then leaving a like on the video would show your support. Subscribe for more PlayStation videos, and let's go. I want to start with a studio you might not immediately think of when talking about PlayStation Studios, PixelOpus. They released Concrete Genie in October 2019, maybe you played it, it was also later added to PlayStation Plus, but yeah, they're now working on a brand new game for quite some time. Last year in June, we learned that they are doing a PS5 game with Sony Pictures Animation, which is an interesting choice, also because later there were some rumors that Sly Cooper might be in development at this PixelOpus studio. Maybe you remember the Sly Cooper movie that was planned, which looked pretty cool in the teaser trailer, but that never released, after which a TV show with the raccoon also did not cross the finish line. But there were always ideas, and now that Sony has some huge success with the Uncharted movie, they have multiple TV and film projects on the way, and we also got some new 2022 rumors of a Sly Cooper TV show that might be in the works. I could totally see that happen, and then it's nice to have a game alongside that too, right? The most recent Sly Cooper game, Thieves in Time, was also made by a different studio, because I overall think it's obvious that Sucker Punch is not returning to the franchise again. Like, it doesn't make sense for Sucker Punch to not go all in with Ghost of Tsushima. On LinkedIn, it's noted that they got 171 employees. They probably got a bit more, but that's still not a lot for an open world RPG, especially because they likely also have big plans for Ghost of Tsushima Legends next to the open world single player game. Because if we go to their job page, we see multiple mentions of multiplayer in the title. Like, Legends was a very successful experiment. They also recently gave it away during PS Plus to get even more eyes on it. They launched a standalone version, and I think that that is the overall future. Have this ongoing live service Legends game next to the single player Jin story, because obviously they're going to continue that as well after the success of the first game, reaching 8 million units sold without a launch on PC, which I would not be surprised is coming this year. There's also a movie in the works, and well, seems like we're staying in Japan for the sequel, looking at a recent job posting as noted by Memento on Reddit. Like, I really can't wait for a PS5 only Ghost game and for the more fleshed out Legends experience next to that. Although with them just launching the director's cut and the Iggy Island DLC and also still supporting Legends, I think it will be some time before we see Ghost of Tsushima 2. First up is Marvel Spider-Man 2, which is still slated for 2023. Really hope they can hit that. Seems that at least some work already started after Spider-Man PS4 in 2018, so I remain hopeful. And after that we of course get Wolverine, which unlike Miles is a full-size game and also will have a mature tone, creative director Brian Horton confirmed on Twitter. I think we're looking at a 2025 release date for that one. But there's more. On June 24th, 2021, Insomniac shared 5 new job openings for a multiplayer project, including a creative director, systems designer, and a story lead. And very recently we got a brand new job listing for an art director within a multiplayer environment, followed by the fact that they have to assist in pre-production, planning, and new IP development with creative directors. So yeah, real quick, high chance that it's not a new Resistance or Sunset Overdrive, which of course also had multiplayer components, but it seems to be something new, or at least kinda new. The system designer job post noted that they were tasked with combat, navigation, progression and economy, with an emphasis on melee combat systems, enemy design and boss design. And this totally falls in line with a Spider-Man or Wolverine game. Sure, they say new IP, but it could also be a new IP in the Marvel Universe. I would just be shocked if Insomniac went back to making brand new IP after the success of Spider-Man, because they never really had financial success with their own IPs. You probably forgot about Fuse, right? But they also made that. Not a lot of people played it. While a co-op Spider-Verse game from Insomniac, they would be kinda stupid not to make that. And we now also have a rumor that Sony is working on a new multiplayer Marvel game exclusively for PS5, and Insomniac is obviously the best studio for this. And now you could say, okay, Insomniac is becoming a Marvel factory, but they still have the Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart team that after the successful launch might be working on another Ratchet game, or maybe they are making something else completely. In short, Insomniac continues to be the steal of the century for Sony, with a pretty huge PS5 generation incoming. And I think Housemarque will turn out to be an amazing get in the long term as well. Returnal was of course great, also won many awards, it sold relatively well for a full price the new IP. We also got that big update in March 2022, even adding co-op to the game, but it seems like they're leaving the Returnal universe behind for now, as in a VentureBeat interview, managing director at Housemarque said it's early days with us, starting a new game, a new IP, concepting it out. We will see what comes with that. So really curious how they will follow up the success of Returnal, but this could totally be a big one. We of course get the follow-up to God of War 2018 already pretty soon, but it seems that Santa Monica has more going on than only the God of War series. And this became clear during the Ragnarok trailer reveal, where we learned that Cory Barlog is not directing the game, but that franchise veteran Eric Williams is. Like, sure, Cory will still be helping out here and there, but seems like he's more focused on something else. And I always go back to this interview with SkillUp after the launch of God of War 2018.
I really would love to create something of my own next.
Right.
Something that really is truly 100% coming from my original vision. That would be awesome.
And I think that's what he's doing right now. Santa Monica always had ideas for a new IP, but it never really worked out. We saw a sci-fi game briefly in the God of War documentary. Like, I think it's something else, as Cory was not really involved in this, but it does really show that they wanted to do something next to God of War. And now very recently we saw that they are hiring for a new unannounced title, which is obviously not God of War Ragnarok, as that is already announced. And they're overall hiring big time for multiple projects, with Ragnarok hopefully reaching the finish line soon, so this is probably for that other title. Imagine next to Ragnarok and maybe a third God of War game that hopefully takes place in a different mythology, also a brand new IP from Santa Monica. I think that would be huge. We also still have some question marks regarding Bluepoint's new game or remake. Like, they're of course known first for their collections, like the God of War, Metal Gear Solid and Uncharted collection, but they then later stretched their muscles for the Shadow of the Colossus remake in 2018 and the Demon's Souls PS5 launch game at the end of 2020. Like, they usually launch these projects pretty rapidly, so maybe we see their new title this year already. That would be a nice surprise, although it does seem that they will include more original work as well. Our next project, we're working on original content right now. We can't talk about what that is, but that's the next step in the evolution for us. And that's what the Bluepoint president said to IGN, so if that's like original content inside a remake, which they kinda done before, or if it's like a completely new game is still unclear, but overall I think it would be weird if they would shy away from their expertise while they are like one of the best remake studios out there. So while nothing is confirmed, I want to touch on the fact that the biggest rumor out there is that this is Bloodborne related. We are hearing many times that Sony isn't done with Bloodborne, and they would also be stupid to not continue one of the most beloved PS4 games. Like, I've never seen this much merchandise for a single game with only one release. Sure, we would all want From Software to do the sequel, but what if they don't want to? What if if they are busy with Elden Ring and other stuff. Then giving it to the studio that just remade Demon's Souls is, I think, a good fit. It will be interesting, and I think it will be huge if they could announce a Bloodborne related product, but it could also be something else completely. Sony Band has been in an interesting position since the release of Days Gone. I love the game, as you might know, but it was clear that it wasn't on the same level as some other PS4 exclusives, not to mention the many bugs and frame drops the game of course had around release. Earlier this year, the game director noted that Sony always viewed the game as a big disappointment, which caused the two most senior leads to leave Sony Band. Not a good look, but turned out that things weren't going well behind the scenes either, and it might be for the best that fresh new blood can decide the direction of the studio. But yeah, we are not getting Days Gone 2, they're now doing a new IP and building on the deep open world systems that they developed with Days Gone. This is what Herman Hulst, the studio head of course at PlayStation Studios, noted. Job listings also suggest ranged and melee combat, just like weapons, gear traversal and player abilities. And they're also looking for a senior technical artist with a focus on weapons and vehicles for our new IP. Seems like whatever this next game is, it's going to be very similar to Days Gone, or like a spiritual successor of some sorts, which could be cool. Like they already got zombies covered with Last of Us, which we're going to get more of, but more on that in a moment. So it would be nice to have something else from Sony Band. Now there was this out of nowhere leak about a Men in Black game from Sony Band at EB Games. Could totally be fake, photoshopped, but props to the person that came up with this idea. Usually leaks are more obvious, and we also had a 4chan leak about a Men in Black game 5 months ago. Again, could totally be nothing. You could argue that it's also not really a new IP, although they could interpret it as Men in Black, a new video game IP. Again, far from confirmed, but still wanted to point out that that was the rumor. Less is known about this latest big addition to the PlayStation Studios family, Haven Studios. But if you like Assassin's Creed like me, then it should totally be on your radar. Not only because it is founded by industry veteran Jade Raymond, who worked on the first Assassin's Creed games, but also on Watch Dogs, Far Cry 4. She recently left Stadia after Google decided to nuke their first-party studios, and Video Game Chronicle did some research and noted that quite a lot of people from Stadia joined her, but more significantly, 70% of Haven employees, 47, previously worked at Ubisoft Montreal. Many of them veterans with a wealth of experience on the Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, Rainbow Six, Watch Dogs and Splinter Cell franchises, among others. I already followed Raphael because of his work on the many Assassin's Creed games. He worked for over 10 years at Ubisoft and drops a lot of cool art on his personal account here and there as well. Like, this instantly makes me curious about this project. What we know is that this first new IP for PlayStation is on track to deliver a AAA multiplayer experience with a vision to build a systemic and evolving world focused on freedom, thrill and playfulness that will keep players entertained and engaged for years. So there is some art on the website that might hint at the setting, which looks pretty sci-fi and overall really mysterious to me. We see 4 humans exploring a creepy tunnel. I can't wait to see the first footage, so we got a better idea of what is going on, even though it will likely be a while before we see it. Herman did note that they are actually exceeding a lot of plans, including in terms of time, which very rarely happens in game development. It's very high on my list, so bring it on. And yes, maybe you already noticed it, but Sony is really pushing more into live service games, something we also went over in my previous news roundup video, which I will link to at the end of this one. They want 12 of those titles by their financial year 2025, which ends in March 2026, and they currently only have MLB The Show that they count as one of them. And in this chart we see how many they want to launch each year, and I think London Studios is likely making one of those games. They're recently known for their VR titles with Blood and Truth and PSVR Worlds before that, but now it seems like they're working on a new multiplayer IP with a magic-based fantasy setting. With a job listing for a senior gameplay designer needing experience with co-op gameplay, online multiplayer gameplay, and games as a service or ongoing games. My read is that Sony London is getting the chance to make something they always wanted to make after having done many games to support PSVR. It also seems like this is not a VR title at all, so will be interesting. And yeah, even Naughty Dog is making a games as a service. Sure, it seems that the Last of Us remake for PS5 is coming out this year. I totally think it's going to happen, likely bundled with the Part 2 Director's Cut. But more interesting is the Last of Us multiplayer project Naughty Dog is also working on. In 2019, they said that a multiplayer mode for The Last of Us Part 2 isn't happening, simply because they had way bigger plans than the factious multiplayer they did for Last of Us 1. It's now referred to as their first standalone multiplayer game, and they've been hiring like crazy since 2019, with their massive April 2022 list dividing openings between single player and multiplayer. But yeah, this title could be anything. There were hints at Battle Royale assets found in The Last of Us Part 2 already, like a map and buildings, as we see in this video from Specializer. Could totally be changed though, because another rumor is that it got completely rebooted and that the game is now a mix of Tarkov and The Division with additional modes inspired by the original Factions multiplayer. So likely a PvEVP game with clickers running around, but also other players, and that we have to like extract certain objects. It will be interesting, but I'm personally more excited or curious about what is really next. They noted earlier this year that they might want to go back to Uncharted, and again the movie is doing super well, so I could totally see Sony want to make a new Uncharted game, also because The Last of Us remake seems mostly made for the HBO TV show that is dropping sometime next year. Witcher 3 had the highest player count after the Season 2 Netflix show drop, so that's the tactic Sony wants to do as well, but I personally hope that Naughty Dog is not going to work on that Uncharted game, but that they're doing something completely new. That's how we got Uncharted and The Last of Us in the first place, right? After they tried a new IP. We don't have a clue yet of if they are doing this and what it could be. There are some insiders saying that they are working on a new IP featuring a first black lead. It's hard to say right now, but I expect this to be a nice swan song to the PS5 generation, just like Last of Us and Part 2 were for the previous Sony consoles. So a new IP to really show what the PS5 is capable of. I'm holding my fingers crossed. Now, before this video reached like more than 20 minutes, I quickly want to touch on some other projects and studios. In September 2021, Sony bought Firesprite. You can know them from Playroom on PS4 and Playroom VR. So they are a pretty sizable team. They're working on the Horizon VR game, but that is far from all. We got some very believable rumors that they are now developing a Twisted Metal reboot as well. Something that was first in the works at the Destruction All-Stars team, but has now been moved over. They're also working on a groundbreaking next-generation PvP shooter project with a games-as-a-service focus, according to a job listing, further noting that it's a new IP with unique mechanics and a unique visual style. We're really missing a Sony shooter these days, so this could be cool, but more interesting is the other one. We're looking for a narrative director to join our development team for a AAA narrative-driven horror adventure game in Unreal Engine 5. So what is interesting is that if we go to that exact same page right now, we see that they're just looking for a narrative designer on a dark narrative-driven blockbuster title with genre-defining goals. They removed the horror part completely. It gets even crazier though, because they're also looking for a senior writer, likely on the same game, where they know that it's a huge, highly ambitious partnership project. But yeah, maybe you already guessed it, they also removed the partnership word from their updated job listing that you can only find right now. We know that multiple Silent Hill projects are in development. Maybe because of recent leaks they didn't want to give too much away, so that's why they changed it. It can totally be something different, but it might be Silent Hill related. We also still got Team Asobi behind Astro's Playroom on PS5, which was a ton of fun by the way. They also did Astrobot. They're now working on their most ambitious title yet. And yes, there are of course more PlayStation studios. Not that interesting like Polyphony, obviously going to do more Gran Turismo. Seems that Media Molecule is focused on Dreams. The only big one I missed here is Guerrilla Games. But now that Forbidden West is out and we got some other theories and rumors, I want to save that for future videos. I can go more in depth on it. Of course, subscribe for that and way more PlayStation content. A like on this video would really help me out. Let me know which game or studio you're the most curious about in the comments down below, and check out that recent video covering some big PlayStation 5 future plans by clicking on the screen. For now, I will speak to you in the next one. Goodbye.